it's Thursday the 7th of July. The question on the phone in this morning, how can we make London 2012 the best Olympics ever?
It was a little bit overcast, but it was a not an untypical summer morning.
And what about the legacy of the Games? Can we get the Olympics to boost the economy in East London and the rest of the nation? And can we use it...
Morning of July 7th, I was heading to Westminster to a conference. Sensible pair of shoes on, because I thought I'd be doing walking. My daughter Emily came with me as far as the station. She was very excited because of the Olympics.
I did my usual sort of reading the back of newspapers to see what the reaction in the press was about it, and everybody seemed to be in quite a buoyant mood, really.
I had a slight quarrel with my wife, which caused me to be slightly late, so I probably left work 15 minutes, 20 minutes later than I would normally.
I was born in East Africa, in Nairobi, but grew up in London, so I'm very much a London girl.
My job title was a property inspector.
I was working in the city within recruitment.
I was an events coordinator.
I was the Director of Law and Governance at the London Development Agency.
I was recovering from a painful divorce.
I was travelling from Peterborough, going to King's Cross, pick up the tube and go to Moorgate.
I missed my train. I was talking to my daughter and I said, I'll catch the next one. I'll get on the next train.
I was running late.
I heard the train come in, so I knew if I went to the front of the train and then worked my way back, I might find somewhere to get on.
It's a weekday, it's rush hour. The carriages are packed.
I'm not very big, but I can hardly move my arms. I thought, my God, I'm only on here till Holborn. I'll be glad to get off.
I've been with London Transport for 34 years and their driver probably for 31. Well, I was based at Edgware Road. Normal routine is come in, have a cup of tea, check all the notices, make sure that I know what's going on. The trains were running perfectly that day, which was unusual.
King's Cross is always packed. It's one of the main terminals where people obviously changing lines.
That morning, I travelled down with two friends. I got on the train at King's Cross to go to Paddington, and they got on the train to go on the Piccadilly line.
Doors opened, and I thought, right, here they come. And they did. A lot of people forced their way on. They really rammed in.
Platform 1 got an 0812 Abellio Greater Anglia service to North.
I got up fairly late that morning, after 8 o'clock. Carrie and June, my wife and daughter, had left for work. They travelled up every single day together, and they had this little ceremony at the end of Liverpool Street Station where Carrie would peck June on the cheek and June would pat Carrie on the bottom, say goodbye. One would go left and the other one would go right.
I was changing at Liverpool Street to pick up the Circle line.
Normally I would go to the back of the train because that's the exit to Tower Hill where I worked at the time.
This is about 9:15.
Because the train was already on the platform, I actually ran for it and got onto the first carriage.
At Edgware Road, the train sort of halted for a while. I was 4 stops away from High Street Kensington and my work, and it was about 10 to 9 certainly. Then the doors closed and we moved into the tunnel.
We got to the first bend in the tunnel, and there was a sound like a firework.
Like a sort of balloon going off.
A sort of high-pitched crack.
Pop!
The train lifted up off the track.
The air was full of tiny shards of glass, and they glittered.
Simultaneously, 5 miles east, there's a second explosion at Aldgate.
You're caught in this yellow and orange explosion. It was so quick, there was no time to blink. All I can hear is this rushing sound.
I felt as if I was lifted. I was going round and round in circles in the air.
And coming down, wondering whether I'd arrive alive or dead on the ground.
Within seconds, there's a third blast. 70 feet underground on the Piccadilly line.
Seconds after leaving King's Cross, there was this massive loud bang.
Within milliseconds, it went from the lighted carriage to pitch black.
The lights went out, and black smoke was filling up into the carriages.
I had the feeling that there wasn't anybody around me, but I couldn't see that. You couldn't see anything. I couldn't see my hands. I couldn't see anybody else.
I thought our tube has hit something or has verged off tracks.
It must have been just seconds, fractions of seconds, but I kept saying, what is this? What is this? What is this? It's a bomb. This isn't good.
What's happening, mate? Do you know?
No, we don't.
All right, I've had a report that there was an explosion at Liverpool Street and Edgware Road.
We've had a report of a bang west of Edgware Road.
Initial reports of the explosions caused confusion at network control.
Explosion on train, yeah?
Or a bang on his train. It's between Liverpool Street and Aldgate.
Liverpool Street, Aldgate, on
the outer rail.
Outer rail.
The news of explosions and smoke underground also reaches the emergency services.
Yeah, it was a female officer from Liverpool Street calling up saying that she'd heard a loud bang or explosion from the underground at Liverpool Street. Wasn't sure what it was and that she was going to go down onto the underground to investigate it. There was something about the message that just got the hairs on the back of your neck standing up. There was something. It wasn't a run-of-the-mill message.
We've had reports of explosions at Edgware Road, yeah, Liverpool Street. They believe they've had an explosion at Russell Square.
With 3 sections of the underground system simultaneously losing power, network controllers suspect an electrical fault has caused a power surge.
I had no idea what had gone wrong. My thoughts were, as the train was passing me, that somehow we'd hit each other. The traction current, the electricity had all gone off, and I was sitting there in the dark for a couple of seconds, a couple of moments, and all of a sudden there was these screams. I knew something but terrible had happened from just those screams.
There was an arm on my left leg, which I remember removing from my left leg, and I remember feeling at the time that was an inert, that arm, and that belonged to a dead person.
I can't get into the bomb compartment because of this chap with a damaged leg that was blocking the way. I could see into it. It looked a mess. That is the only word to describe it, a mess.
It was in the dark, so it was just extraordinary. I thought, oh, something's very wrong there. And I knew I couldn't move from then onwards. I was sort of stuck to the floor almost. I do remember every now and again shouting, and I don't know how I even saw them, but don't stand on my foot, don't stand on my foot, because people were moving around there. I remember taking my jacket off, and half-heartedly, because it was a long time since I was at did national service or any sort of first aid, taking my jacket off, my suit off, and putting it down in that area where, as if to start a sort of tourniquet.
Well, I told the signalman that I'd had a bomb go off on my train. I've got passengers all over the track and bits and pieces of the train all over the track. And he said, no, don't worry, it's all right, it's only a power surge. I'm thinking, well, power surge, that is not a power surge. A power surge would not put people all over the track and destroy your train.
At Aldgate, the explosion in the second carriage has also blown debris and passengers across the tracks.
I opened my eyes and I found myself on the train track, partly underneath the train, partly outside.
It was pitch black and it was absolutely stone quiet.
I could see people on the floor of the train, and I could see some people lying around.
And I remember staring and staring into the darkness, just trying to see a sign of life, because I really thought I was dead. At that point I thought I was dead. And then I put my hand to my face and I just felt all this blood, all this wet stuff. And I thought, well, perhaps it's not over yet.
People were screaming and crying.
People in real pain, of people really dying.
On the Piccadilly line train, the explosion in the first carriage kills 26 and injures over 340 passengers.
The first thing in my mind, we've hit a train. The driver's dead. You've got no guard. We're stuck down in the underground.
We couldn't get out. We were encapsulated in the tunnel.
There were people screaming,
banging on the windows, trying to break the glass, trying to escape.
I think, George, this could be it, mate. This could be where it all ends for you.
I believe I shut down because I was waiting for death to come.
We're trying to establish what all lines have got and what they're doing as we speak. That's all I've got.
At Network Centre, controllers still think they're dealing with power surges and a derailment at Edgware Road.
The air was full of this gritty soot, which was very greasy.
You feel like you're the captain of a ship. Those passengers have put their lives in your hands.
I thought, if I can just breathe, then I can deal with everything else. I just need to breathe.
I had to find another way to get them out, and get them out quickly.
The driver's voice came over the intercom.
Anyone that was in the front two carriages who could walk, please make their way to the front carriage, and I will get you off the train at the front of the train and send you back to Edgware Road.
Ray got the door open and he said, "The door's open. There's a way out."
I warned them that they would have to just step over people's bodies and bits and pieces of the train.
There was a woman in front of me. We got to the second carriage and the doors were not there. And she turned and looked in, and her face just sort of screwed up and crumpled, and she began to cry. And I didn't really think. I turned and looked in to the carriage where the bomb had gone off, and I looked and I thought, that's a bomb. That's bomb damage. And then I felt my face do the same, and I began to cry.
I stayed on the train. You can't leave people that need help.
As the walking wounded begin to leave the bombed train at Edgware Road, dead and seriously injured passengers remain in the second compartment.
I was going the opposite direction to what I now know was the train with a bomb on it. Instinct alone drove me to help, not knowing where I was going, really. What I did see immediately on the floor was a passenger lying conscious, prostrate on the floor. His head was to my right. A gentleman I now know as David.
I suspect he was just a voice to me then, Tim.
I told him my name was Tim and I had some first aid skills. Could I check his injuries? And he said, of course. I think there's something wrong with my leg.
One of the things I was, in an extraordinary way, was calm, and I think that was, in a sense, natural, or came to me naturally, because I recognized that if one didn't, it would be harder to survive if one panicked or whatever like that.
We did joke about a pillow, but I said I'd failed to bring one with me that day, or something of that nature. And then, having ascertained he was okay and conscious, as okay as we would make him, I turned to my right and saw diagonally across the carriage a charred corpse. I can't recall having any other thoughts about that at that time, because I didn't, and also because I was then distracted slightly back towards my, still diagonally but slightly left of the corpse, was then this other figure half in and half out of the carriage. And I don't think it'll ever, the depth of the experience hasn't prepared me for saying it any more often or any less often. It's still what it was. The reality that, of course, he couldn't live. He was severed. I lowered him to the track because it was the only place that was there. And I said a prayer for him. I have a Christian faith, and for me, whether he did or didn't matter. What mattered was that I wished him a safe journey into whatever was his next experience.
Are you actually at Aldgate, yeah?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm the supervisor at Aldgate. We've just had a big explosion.
Eyewitness reports from underground staff start to give controllers a clearer picture of the destruction underground.
There appears to be something ahead of the train in the track. We've evacuated.
At Aldgate, many passengers are still unaware of what's brought their train to an abrupt halt.
We didn't realise anything particularly serious had happened to begin with. People were muttering and touching and fretting about not getting to work.
Because I didn't realise that there'd been an explosion, I thought I was still at home in bed having this horrible dream. And I thought, I've got to wake up.
And then I heard people shouting, oh, we need doctors, we need nurses. And I thought, oh, well, obviously something more serious has happened here. So I got my warrant card out and I said, I'm a police officer, let me through.
I come to, but I think I'm in the dream. because it's very quiet. I can't hear anything. And it's very dark. I can't move.
And I thought, well, it's not a collision. We've not had a collision. If we'd had a collision, it would have been crushed. It wasn't a crush. It was like a disembowelment. The train was disemboweled.
I had been blown backwards onto the seats, and then whatever it was that was pinning me down had fallen onto my arm.
And I looked at her and I thought, well, shall I move that metal? I better not, because if I move it and she starts to bleed from the arm, I'm not going to be able to do anything to staunch the bleeding.
And then in this dream, this voice comes and says, "What's your name?"
I said, "Don't worry, help will come. I'm a police officer, help will come, you'll be all right."
I was making a lot of noise and probably swearing quite badly, trying to get this thing off my arm.
Well, she was dirty, very dirty, and as I say, debris on her. But she could breathe. And she could shout.
We've had 3 explosions as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
I've had an explosion at Edgware Road.
Yeah.
I've had an explosion at Russell Square, I think.
Yeah.
An explosion at Liverpool Street.
Yeah.
There are definitely walking injured.
Yeah.
There are possibly fatalities.
On the Piccadilly line, survivors are trapped 70 feet underground in total darkness.
I felt unprepared, definitely.
Something diabolical had happened, but I couldn't see anything.
I'm a Muslim, so Islam is my religion. So I was praying inside of me, praying that I want us to get out alive.
A guy with a very commanding voice said, "All of those that can, when I say I want you to make your way to the driver's cab."
My heart probably started again.
Whatever's gone on here, somebody's got a hold of it, and there's a very good chance you're going to get out. And I can't explain the euphoria that gave.
It looks like all lines are having problems and people are self-detraining.
3 separate incidents?
3, yeah.
Network controllers shut down the underground and begin the evacuation of 200,000 passengers from 500 trains.
Code Amber the whole network. We're going to stop the whole network. All right, darling, can do it now.
No, Code Amber, get them into station and
no.
then stand by.
Because we're slightly closer, I guess, to Aldgate, they asked us to walk back past the train.
I followed a couple of people who jumped off the train, so I jumped off myself.
For a lot of people, they didn't know what they were going to see. They didn't even know there'd been a bomb.
It wasn't until we actually got round the corner we actually started to see debris on the line.
There was bodies on the track, there was debris on the track. People with clothes blown off, their bodies greyed.
People started to walk along the rail tracks, and it was like a convoy of people walking past my window.
I remember looking at the blown out doors and I could see a lady kneeling in there holding someone's hand.
My first aid was pitiful, really. There wasn't a great deal I could do apart from try to stop the bleeding.
I'd never seen such a forlorn, desperate look before.
I thought, surely help will be here soon.
I thought of my son Lewis, who was 5 at the time. I thought of my mother, and I thought of the Olympics. I thought that I'd worked so hard for the Olympics, and I needed to see it through. And I didn't want to die, so I thought, if there's a disaster, they try to save people who are alive first before they go to the dead, and rightly so. So I need to do something for them to know that I was alive.
I could vaguely sort of hear someone screaming for help, so I think that sort of enticed me to go over there. So obviously, someone was calling for help.
I tried to stand up with one foot, and I tried to hold part of the door with the other that was stuck to my leg. And I noticed that my left foot was twisted back. But I managed to lean on the train, standing with one foot, one hand on the door. And I used my left hand to wave to say, I'm alive, help me, I don't want to die.
No one was with her, so I started to walk down to try and assist.
He came and he sat down and held my hand because I was very cold. My clothes was burned.
She was wedged between the rails, complaining of severe back pain, saying she couldn't move, and really just saying she was dying.
I just felt cold and I felt thirsty.
I just took my jacket off because she was saying she was feeling very cold, put my jacket over her and sat down next to her, was holding her hand, and just kept talking to her.
I was sort of in and out of consciousness, but I remember him asking me questions about, was I married, where I worked, did I have children, which I sort of answered, but then he kept asking me the same thing again. And I said to him, why do you keep asking me the same questions over and over again?
I kept saying to Thelma, you know, the emergency services are going to turn up shortly, they're going to be with us, you're going to be out of here shortly.
And I kept saying, when are they coming, when are they coming? And he kept saying they'll be here soon.
Breaking news we're getting from the PA Newswire that there's been reports of an explosion outside Liverpool Street Station. That, of course, in the East End of London. They weren't
certain whether it was a power surge or an explosion. Well, knowing that Carrie would have probably been going through that way around about that time, I thought, well, she's going to be late for work. Her day is going to be disrupted.
There was no doors on the carriage. It had been blown out. I thought, I've got to try and do something here.
I called Carrie's mobile. I couldn't get any answer.
She was laying horizontal across two passengers that were still conscious. And I explained to them that I didn't want to move the young lady at the time because of the injuries that she had or could have.
I just thought at the time that on the underground, no signal, have to wait until they got off.
She seemed relatively peaceful. Every now and again, she would try to communicate to me. And I would just do my best to keep her calm and tell her that everything was okay and that we'd be out of here soon and that the emergency services are on their way.
I've had desperate shouts from both ends at Aldgate and Praed Street, Edgware Road. They're still desperately waiting for emergency services. We've got two major incidents.
Yeah, the emergency services have declared they're on their way down there.
As the walking wounded emerge from underground, the emergency services start to reach casualties still on board the 3 bombed trains.
As we came past Aldgate, I could see smoke coming out the station, people coming out the station with blackened faces and of us walking wounded.
The level of what seemed panic on people's faces and upset, there was clearly something more significant than just a little bit of smoke in the tunnel.
There was a smell in the air. It was a chemically smell. It was burnt electrical smell, a coppery taste to it.
This must be an explosion. It's the only thing that could cause that level of destruction in my mind at the time.
When we went down to the train, there were still a few last people still walking down the train track and going out of the station. So it was obvious that this was a very fresh event. This had only just happened.
You could see a line of people coming from down the tunnel towards us on the platform. So at that point, we're on the platform.
I've been to some big car crashes, but I'd never seen anything of this magnitude.
There's still people on there. Clearly, we need to get in.
I kept shouting out to people within the tunnel, and they kept telling me, there's people coming, there's people coming.
Unfortunately, some people that had taken the full force, I guess, of the blast, and again, working it out from being in there. They had been standing and they had been blown onto people that were sat in shock.
I didn't want to leave her. I wanted to make sure that before I left that she was okay.
She had been breathing, she had been alive, and he was giving us over various details of her, and obviously very concerned for her, and wanted to remain at the scene.
The firefighters are trying to get me to leave. I said to them, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen.
At this point, there was a paramedic that came on, and he had, which was like the Holy Grail at the time, this first aid kit that was obviously a lot better than ours. And I remember thinking, this is great.
I was relieved, knowing that there's experts on the scene rather than me trying to hold things together.
We never thought that she had been seriously injured or lost her life in it. You were hoping beyond all hope that she was stuck somewhere, she was helping other people. It even got to the stage a bit later on that we were hoping that she was dazed and just walking about. You know, some people were walking about in a daze and couldn't get through to us.
I think doing the job that we do, you always think that you can do anything and help everyone. And I think on that occasion, we couldn't.
And I remember standing there thinking, no, that can't be right. I've just been down here for half an hour, doing my best to look after this young lady. You guys are meant to turn up and make everything all right. And it wasn't meant to be.
It was 10 days after the events that Carrie was formally identified. We had a visit from scenes of crime officers, and they took dental records, they took fingerprints, and they took DNA. And it wasn't, as I say, until the 10th day that Carrie was formally identified.
We have had it confirmed now that the entire tube system has been shut down, and that means, of course, that some people may be trapped in tunnels.
As the first live pictures reach television, multiple reporting of the 3 bombs continues to spread confusion about the number and cause of the blasts.
We've got the Press Association now quoting British Transport Police, who said explosions have occurred on the London Underground at Edgware Road, King's Cross, Old Street and Russell Square. Just to repeat that, British Transport Police
At that point, I knew there'd been other devices. The senior fire officers had heard on their network that there'd been other devices. There was a conflicting number, conflicting locations, just added to the chaos.
Some breaking news from the Press Association. It says London Underground has said that there has been another incident at Edgware Road Station in northwest London.
I got a phone call saying that something had happened. The scene was absolute chaos. There were police cars arriving, ambulances arriving. I just kept shooting and tried to capture what I saw. It was all in flux. Things were just shutting off. They were shutting down the road.
People were starting to emerge from the station, people who were visibly shocked. This one lone police officer was trying to juggle putting this cordon tape into place and stopping people from going towards the station. So I can either carry on to work and just go, nothing to do with me, or I can get involved and do something. I came across a girl who'd been burnt, her face was burnt.
She had bloodied feet and her trousers had been ripped to the bottom. They looked like they'd come from a war zone.
As we ran across that road, the only noise I could hear was the shutters of the cameras going off as we ran towards them.
You didn't know what was underneath the mask. You didn't know how horrendous her injuries were. He was really looking after her and she just looked so helpless.
We'd found this burns mask in a burns kit. It was just something that she was able to hold to her face.
It was a mixture of horror and humanity. That's what I think the image is interesting, the image, is that there's a mixture of horror and humanity.
I said to Davinia at the time, I think you're going to be in the newspapers tonight.
I finally managed to speak to my line manager and he said, you've got the front page of the Standard. It's, we believe it's a bomb has gone off. And I didn't even know that a bomb had gone off. I couldn't believe it. I was standing there at the scene, I didn't even know.
With the emergency services responding to reports of multiple explosions underground, there is a growing fear that there may be more to come.
There's myself, paramedic, 2 or 3 firefighters, other firefighter comes up, stops us and tells us they believe the scene to be safe, they don't believe there's any more explosives. Obviously takes us back a bit because that's the first time I've heard anything about explosives.
I remember coming to and I couldn't move my left arm, and I think it was a slight setting on of panic.
I just remember looking at her injury and just thinking that just must be just phenomenally painful.
Of course, all my hair had been singed with a butt blast and my eyebrows had been burnt off, and I'd got, obviously scars where the glass had hit my face and stuff.
I remember us trying to work out how we were going to get her, because she was a lot higher than us. When she was presented to us, she was a lot higher because she was in the carriage and we were down on the track side. So how we were going to carry her.
The more senior firefighter appears outside the window, blows his whistle, firefighters themselves look up and look across at him. And he's like, we want everyone out the train. We believe there's a secondary device on board. Oh. I look at my patients, I look at the firefighters, and I kind of say to the firefighter outside, no, I'm not going, I'm staying here. And he's like, no, secondary device, you've got to get out. I was like, no, I'll stay here. In my thinking, because I've just told these people they're going to be okay. I'm with you. I'm not there going to run away.
I don't know whether it was a police officer or who had said that potential secondary devices, and you can leave now if you want to.
So 2 firefighters both look at me and their boss, and the firefighters are very regimented. If someone tells them to do something, they're doing it. Quite remarkably, they both go, no boss, if he's staying, we're staying, we've got to look after him.
We won't be leaving until the last person that's last savable life is saved, and that was just, that's just the job. We're not going to just say sorry. I know you're in a bad way, but we're going to be off now until we can make sure there's no secondary devices. That's not the right thing to do.
Between us, we manhandle this person out, and they're taken away by some more firefighters outside the train.
And the next voice that I heard was somebody saying, "Stay with me."
I remember then us taking this lady on the journey, as it were, up to the platform and out. And then, obviously, from there we turned around and went back down again.
Just to reiterate the situation, Transport for London are asking all passengers to avoid the London Underground. The tube network is basically down. Now, tickets are being honoured by London buses. Stations still at the moment in the process of being evacuated.
With the entire Underground network shut, thousands of commuters seek other ways to reach work. Many cram onto the already crowded London buses.
Anthony was 26 and he was a young executive in the oil and gas company called AMEC. At 9:40 he called to say, I'm getting on a bus to come to the office because there's been problems with the underground.
The 7th of July 2005 was a normal London working day for me. A colleague rang in and said, we've got problems on the Northern Line, we're going to be late, to which I think I rather cheekily said, what's new? Somebody for some reason was watching the television, I don't know why, I think they were searching for some parliamentary report or something, and we heard reports about power surges on the underground. I said, that doesn't sound right. What's a power surge? What does that mean?
I was in Lagos. And I just put on the television and I saw this ticker tape saying something about trains having issues in England, in London, and what it said was there was power outage or something, and so there were some issues with the London Underground. I'm like, uh-oh, power outage. So I just decided, okay, let me just give Anthony a quick call.
The next thing I knew, quietly working away, everything goes salmon pink, a yell from the office, and the bang. Less than 50 feet below me, double-decker bus, roof peeled off, engine about 5 yards behind the bus. Clearly people dead.
Almost 1 hour after the 3 explosions underground, a 4th bomb kills 11 and injures more than 100 in Tavistock Square.
There were bodies by the bus, and you could see that the smoke and the hydraulic fluid spraying out the bus. To the left of the bus there was a torso, no arms, no legs, no head, just a torso lying on the pavement. Nothing prepares you for that, you know. I was told later that was the bomber.
Well, what assets had I got? 1 pocket face mask, 4 first aid boxes, some torn up curtains, some tabletops of stretchers, and 15 doctors of varying specialities, some of whom hadn't managed a seriously injured casualty for 30 years.
Doctors and specialists were coming out of the British Medical Council by this stage to help, and thank God they were there.
I said to them, right, folks, this is a major incident. This is do the most for the most. You need to understand that we will take some casualties, but if we don't accept that we'll take some casualties, we'll take far more casualties in numbers than we need to.
There was dead people hanging out the bus. There was dead people in the bus, you could see them quite clearly, but there was also live people in the bus, and they needed help immediately.
First thing to do was make sure that with all those who were on the ground, the priorities 1s and 2s, that there was somebody with them. We corralled the walking wounded, the 3s, into the old members' dining room, and I put somebody with them.
We called and it wasn't answering. But it was on.
Priority 4 is normally reserved for military work, and it's where you've got somebody who's so severely injured that whatever you do, they're not going to survive. And it is do the most for the most. And these were people, without getting too graphic, who got half their head missing or half their chest missing, but were still alive, still human beings. And I had already put somebody with them, just another human being. They probably wouldn't have known that there was anybody there, but that's beside the point.
On my right was a gentleman in a dark suit, and he was just lolling backwards and forwards, and I could see he had terrible injuries to his legs. He was alive, you know, and I was looking at him straight into his eyes, saying, "Stay with me." He was looking straight into my eyes, you know. He looked. The poor man was terrible. You could see he was in agony and terribly injured. And the firefighters managed to free him from the wreckage. And I think a trestle table had been brought out from the British Medical Council. and he was loaded onto that. And as he was lifted, I could see his leg was gone, his leg was severed. Unfortunately, it was just a crime scene now. There was no one left we could help.
We actually managed to get people, apart from the two who died, every single person who entered BMA House left in better physiological state than they arrived, which, considering we created it from scratch, is a heck of a tribute to the team. I wouldn't put it down to me. They did the work.
I challenge anyone to justify to me how waking up in the morning and sitting amongst decent, ordinary people and murdering them can ever be acceptable. That's shameful. Shameful.
A wonderful young man with a big heart, a loving boy. How can that ever be replaced?
As the first of the fatalities are brought to the surface at Russell Square, some of those closest to the explosion finally become aware of the carnage they've escaped.
The lift doors opened. I saw these two guys with a stretcher held up here, and they're walking along, and I thought, they're obviously going to put them into the ambulance. And they'd done a sharp left. I thought, what are we coming this way for? And they put them down right in front of me. And I looked down and I thought, well, I didn't know what it was. It was black, completely black, top to toe, but it had no legs from the knees they were got. I thought, that's ridiculous. What's that all about? And literally the time it took that to go down and come up again, they brought another one through and put it down next to it, same condition, black. You wouldn't know what it was, male, female, you wouldn't know what it was.
Seeing those seriously injured. And that's what made me wanted to be alone even more. And that's when I basically removed myself from the situation to run across the road to McDonald's and to basically just hide away in the toilets.
I'd literally got out of it in one piece. That I was so thankful for that yeah, it's you feel guilty, really.
The blast in Tavistock Square confirms that London has been the target of a coordinated terrorist attack.
There is no doubt that this is an attack involving explosives.
What's happened with the bus here? What's your understanding what happened
The bus is a bomb that has gone off in the back of the upper part of a bus, so that's all I'm going to say at the moment.
There's some suggestion it could have been a suicide bomber?
There's no reason to suggest that, there's no reason to deny that. It's just, there is not enough information at this stage to make that a fact.
With London shut down, the police begin the forensic investigation that will lead to the identification of 4 British-born suicide bombers. For the victims and survivors, July 7th is the start of a slow process of recovery. For many, it's a journey that continues to this day.
They did a very good job on amputating my leg. It wasn't a guillotine, as it were, in the carriage. They amputated it above the knee in the hospital. And I came to a few days later in intensive care, discovering all this.
I was in a coma for a while. They told me that the injury to my left leg was so severe that they had to amputate.
I was about 3 feet away from the bomber, and they said to me that if I'd have been a foot closer, then I wouldn't have made it. So I'm quite lucky, really.
My mother always says to me, falling down is not the problem, it's failure to get up is the problem. You know.
We accept now that Carrie will never be coming back. She's always with us. They can't take the fantastic time away from us that we have with Carrie. And that's the way I think I want to always remember Carrie. Very happy, smiling, very intelligent lady.
I mean, the average age, so I found out later, of those that were killed was sort of 26. And I was, 61? I mean, you think, well, why? Why did people starting out in life, they get killed? And I'd had a pretty good life up to then, and I'm virtually unscathed.
Some of the people who suffer most are people who weren't really outwardly injured. They didn't have any sort of scars to sort of prove that they were there almost, because they saw, what must have been terrible, whereas I experienced it and then just stayed alive with their help.
The damage that they caused and the difference it's made to me as a person, I mind about that. It took me off the course I was travelling on.
I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, which was very difficult.
And for a long time, I believed that I was trapped and dying, and the flashbacks were moments of consciousness, and that the rest of life was my brain trying to make dying easier for me by pretending that I wasn't.
I can't change the way that I am or anything like that, because if I do start to change the way that I am or was, then the bombers have got the better of me. And I'm not having that. I'm not going to have a coward come along and dictate my life to me.
I looked around and all religions and all races were all helping each other. It didn't matter who you were being helped. And that just shows that terrorists will never win.
We're all different, but that should not make a difference. Whether you are black, white, grey, red, yellow, Muslim, Christian, Islam, agnostic, and whatever, we are all having the same blood running through our veins, and that's what makes us human.
Whilst I always think of 7/7 is a dark shadow that's always close behind, from that dark shadow, you faced your mortality in a very extreme, unusual situation, but you faced your mortality, and it changes your outlook to what's important in life.
Thank you.